Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of our Florida's Best Math. Today we're looking at Chapter 3, Lesson 3.2, which is estimating products. Now, our learning target for this lesson is using rounding and compatible numbers to estimate our products. So we can use rounding like we have been, and compatible numbers is a little different than rounding, but not so much. I'm going to go ahead and try to explain it the best way possible. So let's go. Now, let's take a look at the Explore, okay? We have our regular equations. We have 21 times 24, right? So instead of multiplying 21 times 24, what they want us to do is they want us to round these two numbers together. So we're going to round 21, and then they want us to round 24 to find the best possible match using either rounding or compatible numbers. So let me explain compatible numbers and rounding. So let's look at rounding first. 21, right? We're going to round to the nearest 10. So the 2 is in my tens place. If that's the case, I always need to look at the 1 at the neighbor to the right. Now, once I look at the neighbor to the right, this is the boss. He's the one that's going to tell me my rule. Remember our rules? So let's say those rules out. 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. Well, that's a 1. Is a 1 a 5 or more, or is it a 4 or less? Right, it's a 4 or less. So in this case, we're going to let it rest. Now, the one that gets to rest is the 2. The 2 worked a long day's shift, and he gets to rest, and it's his day off, right? So I'm going to keep the 2. And now every number to the right of that digit is going to be 0. Everyone went home. So that means that 21 rounds off to 20. Now, let me explain compatible numbers. It's almost similar, but not quite. So I'm going to, again, look at the 2, right, which is in the tens place. Now, if we rounded the way that we would, do normal, regular rounding, right? We know that we would look at the 4 and we would say, okay, 5 or more, raise this score. 4 or less, let this guy rest. If we applied the same exact rule, then we would get another 20. So we would have 20 times 20. Now, technically, that's not wrong. That is also correct because it does round to 20. However, you see how it ends in 4? What they want us to do is say find the set of 5, right? In other words, the ones digit is either going to be rounded to the nearest 10, or in other words, it's going to be either a 0, or the ones place is going to be a 5. So let me explain it a little bit more. That means if I have 24, right, what number is closest to it? In other words, what's right next door? It would be 25, right? So that's what they mean by compatible numbers. If it is close to its, I guess you could say its multiple of 5, then you would round it to its multiple of 5. So 24 is close to 25. That's it. So 24 is close to 25. So I could say 20 times 25. Now, don't get it wrong. Does it mean that if I said, oh, 20 times 20, that's not wrong. That is correct. That's using rounding. However, if I said 20 times 25, that's also correct because I used compatible numbers. Okay? Let's try it again. So I have 26, right? Well, if I round down by one more point, remember it's going to end in 5, right? So instead of 26, guess what I can put? I can put a multiple of 5, 25. Now the 38 is not close to 35. I mean, this one is because it's only one more than 25. This one is because it's one less than 25. This one is not. So this one we're going to round. So we're going to use our rounding rules. Look at the 8. 8 is the boss. That 8 is going to tell us if the 3 is going to be a 3 or if it's going to go up and be a 4. In other words, 5 or more, raise this score. Is this a 5 or more? It is a 5 or more because 8 is more than 5. So that means I say 5 or more, raise the score, so that becomes a 4. And every number to the right of that digit is going to be a 0. So I could say that 26 times 38 is the same if I estimated to 25 times 40. Again, does it mean that you're wrong if you put 30 times 40? No, you're not wrong. It's just that it's not using compatible numbers. You're just rounding. There's a difference. So that means that I have this one, 25 times 40. Okay. Now here's the next one, right? 23 is not close to 25. 17 is not close to 15. So in that case, I'm only going to round by using our rules. Rounding to the nearest 10, let's see. 5 or more, raise the score, or is this 4 or less, let this rest? Right, it's 4 or less, you let the 2 rest, and the 3 becomes a 0. So 23 rounded to the nearest 10 is 20. Let's do the same exact thing for 17. I look at the 7, 5 or more, raise the score. 7 is 5 or more, right? So I need to raise this score. So that means whatever number this is, plus 1 more. In this case, it'll make it a 2. And every number next to it will be to the right, will be a 0. So in this case, we used rounding, R for rounding. In this case, we use C for compatible numbers. And here we use C for compatible numbers. So this one, we used 20 times 20. Now that leaves us with the last one. Okay, 42 is not close to 45. 23 is not close to 25. So in that case, I'm just going to round. 42, go to the 2, 4 or less, let him rest. So the 4 gets to rest, the 2 goes home. Times 23, let's look at the neighbor. He's the boss. The 3 is going to tell the 2 if he has to get help from someone to do his job or if he gets to go home and rest. So this is 5 or more, raise the score. No, this is 4 or less, let 2 rest. The 3 becomes a 0. And in this case, we use rounding. So this one was the 40 times 20, which again is using rounding. So you see, it's a little bit of the same, but it's a little bit different. So in other words, the easiest rule of thumb would be if the number is 1 away from a multiple of 5, you make it you round it to the multiple of 5. In other words, you round it to the compatible number. If it's 1 away, if it's 1 more, you round it to the compatible number. If it is not, you just use rounding. So we're going to go ahead and continue practicing. Let's go to our next page. And here we go. Let's build some understanding, okay? You can estimate products using rounding or compatible numbers. Again, compatible numbers are numbers that are easy to multiply and are super close to the actual number. So, for example, 57 and 38, neither of them are close to a multiple of 5. Remember, it has to be either 1 more or 1 less. So in this case, neither of them are. So what did they use? They used rounding. So in here, we use rounding. They rounded 57. They rounded it to 60. And 38 was rounded to 40. So all I really have to do is multiply 60 times 40. 6 times 4, let's use what we learned in 3.1. 6 times 4 is my basic fact. I know that 6 times 4 is 24. I just have to remember to add 2 zeros. That means that my estimate for 57 times 38 is about 2,400. Okay, now look at this one. Guess what they're using here? Here they're using compatible numbers. Why? because this guy is 1 away from a multiple of 5. 25. 31 is not. So what did they do with the 31? They used rounding instead. So let's go ahead and multiply. What I'm really doing first is multiplying 25. I'm right here. 25 times 3. Okay, let's multiply that first. 5 times 3 is 15. 3 times 2 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. Okay, so we can establish that 25 times 3 is 75. However, be careful with those zeros. It's not 75, it's 750. Okay? So that means that if I had to estimate what 24 times 31 is, I can say that the product is about 750. Okay? Now, let's take a look at our triads. Here we go. All right, I'm moving over to our triad. All right. Use rounding to estimate the product. So here, what do they want us to use? Right, they want us to use rounding. Here, they don't. Here, they want us to use compatible numbers. And here, they just want us to estimate. That's it. So let's use what they're telling us, rounding, no compatible. So let's just round. 27, remember you look at the neighbor, 7, 5 or more, the 2, raise the score, 30, times, do we need to round 50? Nope. So that stays 50. And all I have to do is multiply. So I can multiply 3 times 5 and then add 2 zeros at the end. I could do 30 times 5. Let's do 30 times 5. I know that 3 times 5 is 15. And here I have a 0. So all I have to do is add this one all the way at the end. That means all I know is that my estimate is 1,500. That's my estimate. Let's round 42. All right, you tell me, what does 42 round to the nearest 10? Remember to look at the neighbor. 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. It comes up to 40 times. Let's do this one. Look at the 4. 4 or less, let it rest. Let it rest. 4 goes home. Now I get to multiply. I could say, well, 40 times 1 is 40, but I need to move him over. That means that my estimated product is 400. And last but not least, let's look at number 3. So same rules apply. Let's look at the 1. 5 or more, raise the score. No. 4 or less, let 6 rest. 1 goes home, times, let's do 73. Here we go. 5 or more, raise the score. No. 4 or less, let 7 rest. 3 goes home. Now I multiply. Let's multiply 60 times 7. 6 times 7 is 42 with that 0. However, right, don't forget this one because we need to add him back. So what I really have is my estimated product is 4,200. Okay. Now, this one's a little different. Remember what I told you? Compatible numbers. 19 is not close to 15. Remember, multiples of 5 is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. Those are the multiples of 5. So 19 is not close to 15. Remember, I told you it has to be 1 more or 1 away, right? Or 1 less. So 19 is going to be rounded like these. So let's take a look at the 9. 5 or more, raise the score. So 1, raise the score because this is 5 or more. So what about the 9? It's a 0. Times. Now let's take a look at 26. If I look at 26, well, right, it's close. It's 1 more than a multiple of 5. So what's a multiple of 5? 25, right? So now here's the thing. You only need to multiply. You can multiply however which way you understand. But guys, it's always easier if you could either rewrite it. You could do 25 times 20. It doesn't matter. You're going to get the same product. Remember, stick with your basic fact first and then add that zero at the end. So let's do the basic fact. If I have 25 times 2, right? Let's multiply that. 5 times 2 is 10. 2 times 2 is 4. Plus 1 is 5. So I know that 2 times 25 is 50. But this guy, right? So my estimate is 500. Okay. Now I have, see, this is when they do something like this, right? Let's keep the same thing that we've been discussing. If it's 23 times 78, right? Let's do this. 23. We're going to round that to the nearest 10 because I had told you the easiest way that I know that you're going to remember this is if it's one more than 5 or one less than 5. Now, I am going to say this. Can I round 23 to 25? I can, but I know that that's where a lot of students get really confused because they're like, well, I don't know, when do I round it to 25 and when do I don't, or when do I round it to the 5? Let's not complicate ourselves, okay? So let's just round. 23, round it to the nearest 10. 5 or more, raise the score. Nope, it's 4 or less. Let 2 rest. 3 goes home. Now let's round 78 to the nearest 10. 5 or more, raise the score. Absolutely. 7 is not 7 now. It's either, remember, the 8 is going to tell the 7 if it's going to be a 7 or an 8. So 5 or more, raise the score. So the 7 gets a raise. So now he's an 8. And now the 8 is a 0. And now what do? We multiply. Let's do this one first. 20 times 8, I know that's going to give me 160. And then all I have to do is add that last 0 to my product and I get 1,600. And that's my estimate. Now let's take a look at question 6. Let's do compatible numbers because that's what I've been telling you. Let's take a look at 74 times 20. So 74 is 1 away from a multiple of 5. So let's make that 75. And then we're lucky. This is the 20. So let's keep the 20. And then all we really have to do is just multiply 75 times 2. Just don't forget to add that 0 at the end. 5 times 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 2 times 7 is 14. 14 plus 1 is 15. Remember what I said? Bring him over. Don't forget him. That means that my estimate is 1,500. That's it. And then for 7, 8, and 9, you're going to just estimate. They're not telling you to use rounding or compatible numbers. What they're telling you is use whatever you want. Just estimate. So let's just round because let's keep the same rules. None of these are close. Like this is not close to 45 and this is not close to 75. So let's just round it to the nearest 10. 41 rounded to the nearest 10. This is 4 or less. Let 4 rest. 1 becomes a 0 times 73. Look at the 3. 3 is again 4 or less. Let 7 rest. 3 becomes a 0. And now it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. All we have to do now is just multiply our basic fact. 40 times 7 is, right, 4 times 7 is 28. So if I add that 0 here, then I get 280. But that's not my answer, right? I got to remember to put that 0 at the end. So my estimate product is 2,800. All right, here we go. 52. We're going to round it to, correct, 250 times. But look what we have here. You know what? Let's use compatible. 85, right? Here we go. Now, how do we do this? Same thing. 5 times 85, and then when you're done, you add this guy. So let's do 85. 85 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25, carry the 2. 5 times 8 is 40, 41, 42. Okay, so 85 times 5 is 425. But what did I tell you to do at the end? Don't forget him. That means this is my estimate. My estimate is 4,250. Okay, same thing. This one is very close to a multiple of 5. I'm just going to do that. This is going to be 25 times, let's round this one. Remember, you look at the neighbor. What does this round to the nearest 10? Is it 60? It's going to be either 60 or 70. Right? This is going to be 70. Now I'm going to multiply only 25. 25 times 7. 5 times 7 is 35. Carry the 3. 2 times 7 is 14. 15, 16, 17. So that means, is my answer 175? I hope you didn't say yes, because it's not. I need to add that 0 at the end, because remember, I didn't do anything with him. So he's invited to the party as well. So I have 1,750 is my total estimate. All right. And we're almost in the clear for this lesson. Let's take a look at our in-class practice. Okay, we're going to try just a few more. And then remember, guys, if I'm going too fast or if you get stuck, remember you can always pause these videos. You can rewind these, like repeat the videos, go back, fast forward, or stop, pause yourself, test yourself, see if we got the same answer, things like that. So that way you guys can, stay, well practiced. Okay, we're only going to do number 10, and then we're going to do number 12, and then we're going to look at number 16 and see if she's correct or she's incorrect. Number 10, all right, 44 is close to, now look at what this says, find two estimates that the product is between. So what does that mean? Well, that means that I need to round first for the answer, and then I'm going to use compatible numbers. So we're going to have to just do both of those. So here we go. Let's take a look at number 10, right? 44. Let's round to the nearest 10. 44 rounds off to 40. Remember, you look at the 4. 4 or less, let him rest. Okay, times. Look at the 8 again. 5 or more, raise the score. Remember, raise the score, and the 7 becomes an 8. Now I'm going to multiply. All right, I know that 8 times 4 is 32. And all I have to do is add 1 and 2 more zeros. 1 and 2. That's estimate number 1. Let's use compatible numbers. 44. Oh my goodness, that's so close to a multiple of 5. Let's make that a 45 times, we're going to stay with the 80, okay, equals, all right, here we go. We're going to multiply 45 times 8 first. So let's use this little space right here. 45 times 8. I have 5 times 8 is 40. Carry the 4. 8 times 4 is 32. Plus 4 is 36, right? So this is 360. So I'm going to put here 360, but I need to add a 0. So those are my two estimates. That is it. And the last, well, sort of the last, but not least, 45. Well, guess what? They did the work for me. I'm going to leave it at 45 because that's a compatible number times, well, I'm going to round this guy off to the nearest 10. 5 or more, raise that 4, right? Raise the score. That becomes a 50. Now I'm going to just multiply 45 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 4 is 20. 21, 22. But, right, I can't forget that 0. That means that my estimate is 2,250. Now, this one's a little tricky because I have a compatible number of 45 and then I have 50. So I know what a lot of you think, oh, well, I can't round it off to. Yes, you can. We're going to have to just round both of the numbers off. I already know that 45 rounds to 50. So I can't round it off again to 45. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm rounding the first 45 to 50 times the second 45 to another 50 and find the answer. So let's do it this way. 5 times 5 is 25. Now I just have to add 1 and 2. 1 and 2 zeros. That means that what is the second estimate? 2,500, which then leaves us to our last question. You be the teacher. Your cousin uses rounding to estimate 15 times 72. She gets a product of 700. Is she correct or is she wrong? How do we explain? Well, there's only one way to explain is to solve. So let's circle what we need to find. This is what she got. Let's see. Let's use 15 times 72, right? Let's round. 15. 5 or more, raise the score. That becomes a 20 times 72. Same thing. Let's look at the 2. 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. Right, it's 4 or less. Let 7 rest. The 2 becomes a 0. And now I'm going to multiply. 2 times 7 is 14. And add 1 and 2 zeros. 1, 2 zeros. Well, it's not really 100% correct yet because I rounded it to 20 and the other one I rounded to 70. You know what? Let's use compatible numbers. Maybe she did it like that. All right, we're going to keep 15 because 15 is a multiple of 5 times. But instead of 72, you know what? We're going to round it off to 70. 70. Okay. So, you know what? Let's find out. 15, right? Because I'm multiplying this first. 15 times 7. Let's see what this gives me. 5 times 7 is 35. Carry the 3. This is 7 times 1 is 7. Well, 7 plus 3 is 10. I don't know. This is 105. 105. And then add a 0. Well, she gets a product of 700. I still think that I don't know about that. Okay, we haven't done this, but let's try one more thing. Let's just see. You know what? Let's round. Let's see. I did 20 times 70. I did 15 times 70. So what about if I do 20 times 75? Let's do that way. Let's round 15 to 20. Okay, 72. I mean, I know it's not close to 75, but you know what? Let's see. 75. Because I'm still using compatible numbers. All right, now, let's see what we get. Let's multiply 75 times 2. Okay, here we go. 75 times 2. Right, 5 times 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 2 times 7 is 14. Plus 1 is 15. And then I have to add a 0. 150. And add this 0 to the end. Okay, well, let's see. Because this is trial and error. We tried 20 times 70. That gave us 1,400. My cousin got, or your cousin got 700. That's not close. That's not 700. We tried 15 times 70. That gave us 1,050. Yeah, the number's smaller, but it's still not cutting it. So then what do you think your cousin did? How did she get 700? Because I know there's one way that she could have gotten 700. Now, it's a little, it says your cousin uses rounding to estimate. If the cousin used rounding, right? If we use rounding, not compatible numbers, rounding, this is the only option. This is rounding. It says rounding. It doesn't use compatible numbers. It says rounding. So 15 is rounded to 20, and 72 does round to 70. So if your cousin used rounding correctly, then she would have had 20 times 70, which is 1,400. But I'll tell you what your cousin did. Your cousin said, oh, 15, I'm going to make that a 10 times 72, I'm going to make that 70. This is going to give me 700. However, this, even though it's not close to 15, even though it's not really that close, 10 is still a multiple of 5. So technically this is still considered compatible numbers. So if your cousin would have used compatible numbers, then she would have been correct. But she didn't. It says she used rounding. Rounding is rounding. Compatible numbers is compatible numbers. So in that case, no, your cousin is incorrect. Because she used compatible. If she did that, then she used 10 as a compatible number to 15 and then rounded 72 to 70, and that gave her 700. So the answer is no, no, she is wrong. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. This was our lesson 3.2. I hope you guys understood. Again, you can always go back to those areas that you're still a little bit iffy on. And remember to subscribe to the channel so that you guys can stay up to date with all the lessons that I post. All right, guys, I will see you on the next one, and goodbye.